Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a really potent chapter from Nietzsche's Zarathustra titled The Apostates.
Apostates? So we're talking about people who have abandoned a belief or a principle. Who exactly is Zarathustra referring to here?
He's talking about his own former followers, and the chapter opens with this incredibly melancholic and powerful image. He says, "Ah, lieth everything already withered and gray, which but lately stood green and many-hued on this meadow."
So he's looking at people who were once vibrant and full of potential, and now he just sees them as faded and lifeless. That's a heavy start.
It is. He says he carried so much honey of hope from them, but now those young hearts have already all become old.
But he makes a distinction, right? It's not that they've become old in a good, wise way.
Exactly. He clarifies, and not old even, only weary, ordinary, comfortable. And the reason for this transformation? They declare, "We have again become pious."
Ah, so there it is. They've retreated from his challenging, difficult philosophy back into the comfort and familiarity of traditional religion.
Yes, and he immediately contrasts their current state with their past energy. He remembers them running forth at early morn with valorous steps.
But now, he says, the feet of their knowledge became weary. That's such a great way to put it. The journey itself tired them out.
It's a perfect metaphor, and it gets worse. Now they malign even their morning valor.
So they don't just quit the journey, they actively look back and criticize their own past bravery for ever attempting it in the first place.
He really leans into that theme. He says many of them once lifted their legs like the dancer, embracing the laughter of his wisdom.
But then they did bethink themselves. They started to overthink it, got scared, and pulled back.
And the result? He says, "Just now have I seen them bent down to creep to the cross." The imagery is so stark, moving from dancing to crawling.
The transformation is just so dramatic. He describes them as once fluttering like gnats and young poets around the ideas of light and liberty.
But now, a little older, a little colder, and already are they mystifiers and mumblers and mollycoddles.
He's really not holding back his disappointment. Does he take any of the blame for this himself?
He does wonder for a moment. He asks, "Did perhaps their hearts despond because lonesomeness had swallowed me like a whale?"
That's a surprisingly vulnerable and human moment. He's genuinely considering if his own isolation and distance drove them away.
It is, but he quickly moves past it. He concludes that the real issue is that very few people possess persistent courage and exuberance.
And what about everyone else, the majority?
He's very blunt. The rest, however, are cowardly. He says the great majority, the commonplace, the superfluous, those all are cowardly.
That's a sweeping and heavy judgment on humanity as a whole, not just on his specific followers.
It's a foundational idea for him. He then says that anyone who is of his type, on his kind of path, will inevitably meet predictable types of companions.
Okay, this sounds like a kind of roadmap for the aspiring free spirit. What are these companions?
He says the first companions one meets must be corpses and buffoons.
So, dead ideas and people who mock you for trying something new. That sounds about right.
That's the interpretation. You first have to deal with the old, dead ways of thinking and the jesters who ridicule progress. But then you get your second companions.
And who are they?
These, he says, will call themselves his believers. He describes them as a living host with much love, much folly, much unbearded veneration.
So an enthusiastic crowd, but they're also naive, immature, and maybe a bit sycophantic.
Precisely. And this leads to a crucial warning. He says a person of his type should not bind his heart to these believers.
Why not? They sound supportive, even if they are a little foolish.
Because he knows the fickly, faint-hearted human species. He understands that their enthusiasm is shallow and they won't last the journey.
I see. The half and half spoil every whole. Their lack of total commitment ends up undermining the entire project.
Yes, and with that understanding, he concludes that leaves become withered. What is there to lament about that?
He even advises himself to blow amongst those leaves, O Zarathustra, that everything withered may run away from thee the faster.
Wow, so don't just accept that they're leaving, but actively hasten their departure. Essentially, clean house and move on.
That's the first part. It's all about the initial disappointment and the eventual acceptance. Then he moves on to a direct confrontation.
And this is where he really digs into the psychology of why they turn back, isn't it? Yes, he says he looks them in the eye and tells them to their face, "Ye are those who again pray." And then he declares, "It is, however, a shame to pray."
A shame to pray. That is a very strong accusation. Does he mean for everyone?
He specifies, "Not for all, but for thee and me, and whoever hath his conscience in his head. For you who has seen beyond simple faith, it's a shame."
Because it represents a betrayal of your own intellect and your own difficult journey toward truth.
Exactly. He says, you know deep down that it's the faint-hearted devil in thee, which just wants to fold its arms, place its hands in its bosom, and take it easier.
So prayer in this specific context is a form of intellectual laziness. It's an excuse to stop thinking so hard.
It's an easy way out. It allows you to be persuaded that there is a God and not have to grapple with the colder, harder truths of existence on your own.
And in doing so, he says they belong to the light-dreading type. People who are essentially afraid of the light of knowledge.
Yes, and because they can't bear the light, they must daily thrust your head deeper into obscurity and vapor.
He then gets very satirical in describing what their new pious lives actually look like.
He does. He calls their evening gatherings an hour for hunt and procession, but clarifies it's a tame, lame, snuffling hunt for susceptible simpletons.
He says they're setting mouse traps for the heart. What are some of these so-called traps?
Well, for one, they sit together for long evenings and say, "Let us again become like little children," and say, "Good God."
It's a kind of forced artificial innocence, a regression.
Another example is when they look for long evenings at a crafty, lurking cross spider that preaches prudence, and they think this is profound.
The spider spinning a web under a cross. It's a clear metaphor for finding deep, convenient religious meaning in mundane, everyday things.
Right. Or they'll sit all day at swamps with fishing rods, and on that account think themselves profound. But he says whoever fishes where there are no fish isn't even superficial.
He's just ruthlessly mocking their self-perceived depth, showing how empty it really is.
The list goes on, learning the harp to woo young girls, waiting in darkened rooms for spirits that never appear. It's a portrait of empty, self-deceiving ritual.
And this whole satirical section culminates in the story he overhears at the garden wall with the two night watchmen.
Yes, two old, sorrowful, arid night watchmen. And their conversation is the perfect punchline to his entire critique of this new piety.
And they're doubting God, but in this very human, almost petty and mundane, right?
Completely. One complains that God is a bad father, saying, "For a father, he careth not sufficiently for his children. Human fathers do this better."
The other night watchman agrees and says, "He is too old. He now careth no more for his children." It's like they're talking about an aging neighbor.
Then they get into a debate about proof. One asks, "Hath he then children? No one can prove it unless he himself prove it."
And the other one just scoffs at that idea. Prove? As if he had ever proved anything. Proving is difficult to him. He layeth great stress on one's believing him.
And the final line of their dialogue is the most telling. Aye, belief saveth him, belief in him. That is the way with old people. So it is with us also.
Wow. So they're projecting their own human frailties, their own aging, and their own need for belief onto God himself. They've made God in their own image.
Precisely. And what is Zarathustra's reaction to overhearing this whole absurd exchange?
He doesn't get angry or sad. He just laughs, doesn't he?
He says his heart did the heart writhe with laughter and was like to break. Verily, it will be my death yet to choke with laughter when I see asses drunken and hear night watchmen thus doubt about God.
Because their doubts are just as old, tired, and obsolete as the very beliefs they're questioning. The whole framework is outdated.
That is the ultimate point. He asks, who may nowadays awaken such old slumbering light-shunning things? He says the old deities are long since gone.
And he has that very specific and now very famous theory on how they actually went, how they died.
Indeed, he states they didn't begloom themselves to death with sadness. On the contrary, they laughed themselves to death once on a time.
And the joke that killed the gods was?
It was what he calls the ungodliest utterance from a god himself, an old, jealous, grim beard of a god who forgot himself and declared, "There is but one God, thou shalt have no other gods before me."
And upon hearing this claim of monopoly, all the other gods laughed, shook on their thrones, and exclaimed, "Is it not just divinity that there are gods, but no God?"
The idea of a single, exclusive God was so absurd, so contrary to the very nature of divinity as they knew it, that it became the ultimate cosmic joke. And with that, the old world of gods ended in laughter, not in tears.